Alright, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. Let's just jump right into it. I want to start with this clip that has been stressing me out all day because I'm trying to decipher whether or not I would have made it out in this scenario. Now, this is the clip of the guy that was rock climbing, and then that bear came and attacked him, and he had to fight the bear off. Now, I'm going to play the clip, but no worries because nobody gets hurt. There's no blood. There's no death. It's just the guy screaming and punching and swinging at the bear, and the bear runs away. So, let's go to the clip. I don't know, y'all. I don't know if I would have made it out of that one. And I say that because even though they tell you what to do in those situations, they always say if you run into a bear while you're hiking, you know, you got to appear to be bigger than the bear and appear to not be afraid and make a lot of noise and punch and swing and fight back. And they tell you don't run because the bear will run after you, and don't climb any trees because they can do that too. But for me, I think I just would have been tired. Like, I kept watching the clip and I'm thinking like, okay, this man has been hiking and rock climbing. There's no telling how long he's been doing that before the bear showed up. It's like, you know, he might have been hiking for 3 or 4 hours, just made it to the top. He's on water break. And then who decides to show up with a vengeance? It's a freaking bear. And like, man, and not only that, you fight the bear off once and think you've made it. And you're just catching your breath. Like, oh, I made it. And before you can even do anything, the bear comes back for more. Like, he wants round 2. It's like, what? And I just think if I would have got through round 1, he would have came for round 2. I'd be like, you know what, look. Make it quick. Go ahead. You got it. I don't even know what I was doing out here. Go ahead. Because I just don't know. You just be tired sometimes. I don't know. It's kind of like, for some reason, if I watch a scary movie or like a horror movie when I'm tired, I just don't have the same energy to fight for my life like the characters do in the movie. Now, if I got my energy up, then cool. We throwing hands. But like, when it's like 1 in the morning and I'm kind of binge watching something and I'm half asleep and the people things are just not aligning in the movie where they keep trying to get away and they keep almost dying, I'm like, you know what? Forget it. Like, I don't think I would have made it out in Squid Game. Like, they just had too much to deal with. Like, that money seemed real nice, but forget it. Like, sadly, my number would have popped up on that screen because I'm not about to deal with all that. I'm just be tired. Like, that's why I don't even fight like that. I be talking trash, but I don't be fighting because I'm tired. I don't be feeling like it. It's like, you know what? Listen, I know you mad. You want to throw hands and punch me in the back of the face, but we're going to have to do this tomorrow because I'm tired. So what time you get off? 6 o'clock? All right, cool. I might be there. Maybe. But it just gave me a flashback to, I told you guys that one summer when we were at the baseball stadium and then there was a shooting outside the stadium, but the people inside the stadium heard the gunshots, and so we all thought it was the armed shooters in there coming to spray everybody. And I'm like, dang, I gotta fight for my life right now. Like, I was in a good mood. We were chilling. I'm like, we gotta do this now? Like, I was so annoyed. And then I snapped and woke up because I was like, wait a minute, this is like a baseball game. You know, black folks don't even be at baseball games like this. So I was like, I was hoping these weren't like some white supremacist mass killers because it wasn't but 3 or 4 black people in my section. I was like, dang, these people gonna snitch on us. we gonna be hashtags. So we might have to figure out what we gonna do up in here. But fortunately, it wasn't, you know, a real thing. But I was pissed because I was sitting in a puddle of beer. Like, you know, we had to get under the seats, and I was like laying in this big old puddle of beer. I was just like, this is the worst summer ever. But I don't know, just something about that bear. Good for old boy. He made it out. He had some determination and some stamina. I'm talking all this trash, but I probably would have still tried to fight and make it out. But that's got to be scary because you're already up high. And one bad slip, you're going to fall 2,000 feet on top of that. It's just crazy. And I was just thinking, like, if we were hiking and there was like a group of my friends, like just as goofy as we are, one of us would have been laughing while the bear was coming. Just like we're not about to die. Like, what's so funny? Like, we don't take anything seriously. Even like that same friend I was at the baseball game with. One time I had just dropped her off home, you know, and I'm on my way leaving. Something told me look in my rearview mirror. I'm looking, and I see her like running behind my car. I'm like, what's that, bro? What's going on? So I stop, and she's like, my door is unlocked and my door is open. I think somebody's in my house. And I don't know what the two of us thought we were about to do. So we're like, oh, we're going to go in there and find out. We're going to make sure nobody's up in there. And she always kept a knife nearby. Don't ask no questions. You know, you live in the city. You got to take care of yourself. And so she had the knife, and there was a brick that I had picked up. And first we got an argument over who was going in the house first. I'm like, well, you got the knife. You stab, I throw. Like, that's how, you know, stab, what? You know, but anyway, so we agree on who's going in first. Then we get in there, and for some reason, like, when you got, like, a good friend, y'all can't take nothing serious. Like, we kept laughing. I was like, yo, we about to die. Like, everything that could make noise made noise. The door was squeaking. Like, what you doing? Then I think I stepped on something and like it made a whole bunch of noise, like the floor creak. Yeah! I'm like, dang, what the heck? And then somebody stumbled over something. It was a good thing nobody was in there, and it's, for some reason I think the roommate just didn't close the door properly, because we would have been all sliced and diced, because I don't know what we was doing. Silly. Anyway, for those who follow the book club, we do have our next session on October 24th at 9 p.m. We have been reading What the Fireflies Knew by Kai Harris. I actually have it right here. This book right here. I got to keep it back here because if I move it up here, it won't be in focus anymore. So, this is on the 24th, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Like I said, I normally just post a Zoom link, and then you guys feel free to just click the Zoom link and join us. We just talk about, different chapters, and then eventually we kind of stray away from the book and just laugh and chop it up. It's always a really good time. So if you have not had a chance to catch up on the book, feel free to do so. And even if you haven't read the book all the way, but you just want to be a part of the conversation, you are welcome to join us. So again, that will be on the 24th at 9 p.m. Anyway, moving on. So this next segment, I think I'm going to revisit the next time I do a live session, just because I want to see your answers in real time. But I still want to talk about it now while it's fresh in my head. Somebody on Twitter had asked the question, which black sitcom had the best theme song? And I was like, man, we'll be here all day trying to figure that out. And I say that because most black sitcoms had a really good theme song. It doesn't even matter what era it came out of. When you're talking about cross-generational appeal, literally every black sitcom had a good theme song. I was like, dang, man, that's hard. It took me forever to come up with my choices, because there's so many good ones. Like, first of all, if you just go back in the day, like if I were to pick my three, if I'm picking three based on just cultural impact to the point where if I go out on the street and randomly start singing it, somebody's gonna know it, I think my top three would be the Jeffersons. Even if they don't know all the words, they at least know the melody. The Jeffersons, Good Times, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Those would be my three as far as just impact, especially Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's like a song everybody knows, even if they don't watch the show. As far as like aesthetically pleasing or sonically pleasing to my ears, because I like the melody and the harmonies and the singing, I am going to say One on One, because I like the way that Shanice and B. Slade work together on that song. And I really liked Hanging with Mr. Cooper, the one that In Vogue sang. That was a really dope theme song. That could have went ahead and been an R&B song released to radio. Same with One on One. Those are my two as far as what I like to hear the most and sing along to. But literally, you could name so many shows. Pretty much any of those UPN shows, they all had a good theme song. The Parkers, Moesha, Half and Half. And again, even with the throwback, Sanford and Son didn't even have words, and it was still good. It was just a catchy melody with the instruments. Even with like some of the kids shows, Smart Guy, I liked the second theme song they had. I wasn't too pressed about the first one they had. Well, he's a smart guy. I wasn't worried about that one, but it was the other one. I forgot how it went. But you definitely had, what's his name, rapping on the opening for that. I like that one. I like season 5 through 7 of The Cosby Show opening. That's the one where they're dancing and it kind of looks like they're in like the regal clothes and they're dancing to the song that kind of sounds like Shotgun from Junior Walker and the All-Stars. I used to love that one. And I had an aunt, or I still have an aunt. I'm over here acting like she ain't here no more. But I have an aunt that when I was little, I used to think her and Felicia Rashad were almost the same person because they just had so many similarities with their facial features. So I used to think that was really her dancing in the opening because they just looked so much alike to me when I was little. Man, we'd be here. Honestly, can we bring theme songs back? I think that might make America a happier place. People don't have enough stuff to sing along to anymore. Everybody just mad all day about everything because the world is crazy and the country's crazy. But even the white shows had good theme songs, like America's Funniest Home Videos. The way I used to go in when I used to come on, stories come from next door. I think I'm singing it wrong, but that was a good theme song. Step by Step. I don't remember ever watching a single episode of that show, but I remember that song like nobody's business. Family Matters, I know it's a black show, but it was the white guy singing the song. Even Family Matters had a good theme song. So, I don't know. Bring the theme songs back. Alright, those were some good times. We'll revisit that. But yeah, I would say my top 3, because I don't think I can just pick one. But if I had a top 3, like I said, as far as cultural impact and just something that everybody can recognize from just the melody or hearing it, Good Time, and in this order, Good Times, The Jeffersons, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then as far as sonically pleasing for me, it's between One on One and Hanging with Mr. Cooper, the one that In Vogue sang. Y'all ain't gotta agree. I know y'all gonna fight me in the comments, but it is what it is. That's just how I feel. Anyway, Also, if you didn't get a chance to check out my latest announcement, I'm excited to share with you all that we are turning the Comedically Hardheaded podcast into a short film, and I'm really excited about this one. We actually start filming in Los Angeles in November, and so we've been really getting the ball rolling with this one. For those who are unfamiliar, in addition to this YouTube platform and my music and stand-up comedy and everything else, I also have a podcast entitled Comedically Hardheaded, and it's presented in the form of storytelling where I go back and I revisit different moments in life that took place. And so really one of the goals I have with the podcast is, I think sometimes on this channel, because we can get very serious when we talk politics and things that affect people collectively, I wanted to also have something on the other end of the spectrum that's like, okay, this man is just not pissed off every day. He actually does have a sense of humor. And so I consider the Comedically Hardheaded podcast something that is feel-good content. You leave with a good laugh. And so we are doing an adaptation of the Pull Over So I Can Hit You episode. And long story short, it is an episode where my father thought it was a great idea to have the entire family in the car while I learn how to drive. It is a hilarious episode. I will have the link to the episode in the description. We've also launched an Indiegogo campaign to help fundraise for this project. And I also want to say thank you to those who have been contributing thus far. We really appreciate it. It is going to help this project get very far. But there are a lot of things that we have to pay for and cover because, again, this is a larger scale project. There's different location permits that we're going to need to pay for, things surrounding the crew, the technology, the equipment rentals, things like the sound mixers and the boom operators, like all those different things we need to cover. This is an episode that centers on a family in a moving vehicle, so there's even different technology that we need to pay for in regards to what it is that we can utilize, and so there's a bunch to cover. And so yeah, if you can support us, we would love to have your support. I will have the Indiegogo link in the description of this video, as well as a link to listen to the Pull Over So I Can Hit You episode, just so you guys can kind of see the vision that we have as far as where we're going, and I'll keep you updated with any additional updates in regards to what it is we're doing. So I'm really excited, and we can't wait to share the final product with you all. So before we jump into this next segment, I want to read some of the article first before we jump into our conversation, and it states, chemical hair straighteners linked to higher risk of uterine cancer for black women, study shows. Women using chemical hair straightening products are at a higher risk of uterine cancer than women who reported not using them, a new study by the National Institutes of Health found. Researchers noted that black women may have a higher risk because they are more likely to use such products more frequently. A group of researchers with the NIH's National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences looked at the hair care habits of more than 33,000 women and found that those who use chemical hair straightening products at least 4 times a year were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer. 60% of participants who reported using straighteners were black women. The bottom line is that the exposure burden appears to be higher among black women, said Chandra Jackson, a participant in the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences Earl Stadman Investigators Program, who co-authored the study. So that article is coming out of NBCnews.com. I'll also add that link to the description because I didn't read the full thing. There's also a video that accompanies it. I guess the thing I would say is it's kind of scary how certain things still tie together and how everything can work full circle, sometimes not in a good way. And it was interesting because I saw a lot of commentary and feedback from a lot of folks who were really lighting up people who perm their hair. And I think sometimes we have to look at a bigger picture of just the societal norms that once existed. Like, understand, we're just now, and I don't even want to say we're coming out of this era because I still think we're in it, but there are efforts to change that. But I think we're coming out of an era where for the longest black hair has been policed. Like, think of all the different stories we've covered before where kids weren't allowed to wrestle because they had locks and they needed to cut them. Kids couldn't graduate because they had certain hairstyles that weren't deemed appropriate or they didn't have enough etiquette for specific ceremonies and events. You know, a lot of times when people talk about what kind of hairstyle is deemed professional for the workplace, even in academia, and this also includes some of our HBCUs, not too long ago, even some of our HBCUs had rules where certain hairstyles were not allowed. Even with the men, you know, you weren't allowed to have braids depending on where you went to. If you had locks, depending on where you went, they had to be neat and tightly kept and all these different type of rules. And you know, even with some of the rules that exist with certain corporations, it's like, oh, well, for women, your hair has to be in a tight bun. But think about what that experience is if you're a woman that goes natural and you also don't straighten your hair naturally. You keep it in its natural state. Do you know how hard it is to tie your hair in a bun and keep it tight? You know what I mean? Like different things like that. And so black hair has been policed for so long. We're just now coming into this space where, you know, there's different policy that people are trying to push out there. You have things like the Crown Act, and there's also the natural hair movement, and people just finding better options in regards to how to maintain and take care of their hair. But, you know, I just think it's kind of scary because, listen, when I read that, the way I called my mom was like, Mom, listen, please don't ever get another perm again. I don't know if my mom perms her hair or not. I don't know what she does, but I need her to live to be like 105 and able-bodied and in good health. So I was like, figure out another option. If you want to get a fade, get a fade. paid, do what you got to do. Just please take care of yourself because you're my last parent. I need you to be here. And so, it's crazy. And it's not even just a thing about women, I would say, because even men, like, think about back those early 2000s when we all used to get the S-curls as teenagers in the early 2000s. A lot of the stuff that was in those S-curl kits are the same product that would be in a perm kit. And if you just think about the process of that, that's what made me kind of say, okay, I'll never use one of those again after like middle school, because it was like I didn't like the process. I feel like getting those S-curls was the same as like a perm. They put the little protective thing around the outside of your scalp and protect your ears from getting burned and the back of your neck and all that. So you put that on, and then they put all that thick white stuff, whatever the perm stuff is or the S-curl stuff is, and you got to sit there, and the more it burns, the better it's working. And I remember back in the day when my mama used to put it in my head. She used to be like, I'm going to leave it in extra long because you got some thick hair. You got to really make it, you got to sit long, Michael. And so, man, you be sitting there, hair just burning. I'm like, all right, you got to rinse it out now. Rinse it out right now, Mom. And like, you rinse the stuff out. And then, it would look cool. But then even when you touched it, it was like, I feel like there's nothing there because it would be so thin and so whatever. But, when you just think about what goes down generationally, I don't know. That's one of the things that's just kind of, I don't know. It's a lot. But I do feel like this isn't even really new information. I feel like there's been additional studies that have come out that have highlighted this before. It just goes to show like sometimes the different products that are out there, we never know what the long-term, end results and effects can be. But man, I tell you, that S-curl, that was a process there. You'd go through all that and then you'd carry that little, I used to carry like this blue activator gel. Like you'd already get the S-curl process and all that crap, and then you'd have that S-curl activator. You just rub a little bit of that in and go out, and you'd be looking like a member of the barge. But by the end of the day, that thing used to be so dry. Like, man, honestly, I feel like corporations and companies really just started investing in black hair products that were more safe or better for the hair once they realized that a lot of black owned businesses started making their own products and stuff. Because even for my hair, I guess, I didn't even know I had a curl pattern until I was in my mid-20s. Like, just because I wasn't using the right stuff, I didn't know there were different products that you could use that were healthier to use or better options. So, I can't tell people what to do with however they choose to present themselves, but, just try to find the safest options. And again, like, it's crazy how things work full circle, because again, I've always just said like black hair has always just been policed for so long, and we're just now trying to get into the space where you're going against the grain and just doing what works for you, and society still punishes you for that. Like, even look at what happens with a lot of black news anchors that are women. If they go natural, sometimes they get a lot of hate mail and letters. I've seen a few times where there's a black news anchor that's beloved, and as soon as she goes natural, she gets all those letters like, what are you doing? You need to change it back. Have you lost your mind? So it's a lot. Speaking of products, I did want to shout out one of my subscribers, Kenya. They've been supporting this channel for a really, really long time. And they actually have a hair care line entitled Vine and Branches. What I like about the product is that they focus on safe and effective ingredients for black hair, in addition to the fact that they don't water down the products because the products are concentrated. In addition, it's a black-owned business, it's black formulated, it's black tested, and they got a black staff. And I've actually used this product a few times. I've actually still been using it because, listen, I'm real skittish when it comes to trying stuff in my hair because it took me years to figure out what I could use that actually worked. But it's a 3-step process that I've used. They have different kits, but the specific one that I'm using, it consists of 3 different steps. So it starts off with the conditioner, which is like this nice thing here. And mind you, on the side, it tells you all these different products that are not in here. I can't pronounce half of this stuff, but there is no, let me see, there's no soybean oil, there's no petroleum, there's no mineral oil, no silicones, no artificial colors. I think this is called porcine. No isothiazoids, something I can't pronounce, but it ain't in there. No formaldehydes, no, parabens? I think I said that. No phthalates, no xenothanol. I'm sounding real illiterate right now. Just know all that stuff ain't in here. That's what won me over. But anyway, so it starts out with the conditioner. I'm sounding like I can't read sitting in front of all these books. So it starts out with the conditioner, and then the next step that won me over was they have like a restorative nutrient serum. Now, mind you, it'd be bigger than this. They sent me like the sample size, because at first I got nervous. I was like, first of all, like when you use the product and they're like, you use a dime size amount or a quarter size, and I'm like, how much hair I got out of it? And then the product fall out of your hand and slide in the shower. You're like, oh shoot, that's like $3 worth. Got to pick it back up and scoop it back up. But anyway, so you use that and then you finish it off with the moisturizer and style. And the reason I actually like the product is because, every now and then you guys will see me wear my hair and like the twist and everything. But in order to get into that, I have to comb this stuff out. And as nice as these wonderful curls sometimes can look, they like to tangle at the ends, and I be fighting for my life trying to comb this stuff out without ripping all my hair out. And so this product made it very easy to pretty much run a comb through all of this. Like, it's defined, but it's yeah. So it's in. I've used it like literally the other day, so I don't know how you guys can see the definition or not. I don't know what this camera's picking up, but pretty much I feel like I'm getting what I was getting out of the previous products that I used. Only I like this more because it's actually one of the subscribers, and again, it's a lot more natural, and it's an actual business that I can get behind. So definitely check out Vine and Branches. Also, because they were so gracious, there is also a discount code if you order. You can use my code name, Calvin X Janet. I did not pick this name, by the way, but you can use Calvin X Janet for a 5% off plus free shipping and no tax. All right, so definitely check them out. Again, it is Vine and Branches. And then when it comes to the show Drink Champs. Now, I already said I'm not about to spend a whole lot of my life constantly reacting to everything that a certain rapper says. And I've already said at this point I'm not talking about him anymore. But I will talk about Drink Champs for a second. Now, they invited a specific rapper on their show. And as we know, that rapper has been in the headlines for a few weeks with a lot of their viewpoints and opinions that have shaken a lot of different tables. And so the rapper goes on the show, says their rapper thing. It stirs the pot even more, pisses off a lot of the right and the wrong people. And Drink Champs decides to yank the episode down. Now, mind you, this was one of their highest rated episodes. Literally 1.5 million views up until the point before they yanked it down. And so I'll say this. When I was a little flabbergasted, because one, I'll say this, like as much as I've been lighting up that rapper, everybody knows at this point, this man is not only not well, but I think it's more intense than we really thought it was. Like, it's to the point where it's like, somebody keep an eye and make sure that this person doesn't harm himself. But I think what frustrates me is you're seeing a lot of outlets take advantage of this moment because they know that if they can get him on their show, they're going to get some of their highest ratings ever. And they, you know, and it's because people don't know what this individual is going to say when they get on there. And so people are willing to take the risk if there's going to be a payout that comes with it. And I think it comes to a conversation of integrity. Like, how do you want your brand to be perceived? And it kind of pisses me off because I love Drink Champs. Like, I think that's a really dope show. Like, good energy, really great interviews. You get a good laugh. The different guests that come on there loosen up, and it's just a great time. And so when you put two and two together, it's like you already have this individual who we know is not well, and right now they're sporadic, and anything, you know, that comes to their mind, they're going to say. So who thought it was smart to take that specific individual with everything that he's dealing with and give him a microphone and some liquor? I was like, what did you think was about to happen? You know what I mean? It's just like, okay. And then, of course, you know, they were bragging about the ratings and how good it was going. And then once the backlash started hitting, then here comes the flip-flop. And no, we need to apologize. And we were just so caught off guard. We didn't know what was happening. All of us were inebriated. And so I'm like, you know what? Y'all knew what y'all was doing when you invited them on there. So at this point, what you get is what you get. You know, sometimes every interview is not worth it. And I understand. People want to have that moment. And yes, he is the topic of conversation and will continue to be for the next few weeks, depending on what is happening in the news and what it is that he's doing or what it is that he's saying. But, like, understand, like, the guy is just not well. And it's to a point where I think people are almost, it reminds me of like when people invite Orlando Brown on interviews. Like, clearly Orlando Brown is back and forth with a substance abuse issue. He is, if it's not that, it's something else. But people know that when he goes on the show, he is not in his right state of mind. But people keep inviting him on because they know that they will get views. Same thing when all the bloggers were inviting Jaguar Wright on their show. They knew she had a bunch of things going on, and they were inviting her to everything. Like, people know what they're doing. And I think because of this specific individual, because of the amount of impact and influence that he has and how big of a celebrity he is in relation to caliber, they're like, yeah, we're going to have him on. And he's been on there a few times before, but clearly, like, if you got a chance to see any of it, I didn't really watch, but I did see some of the snippets that were posted on some of the different forums and, you know, blog sites. You know, listen, what you put out there is what you get. So if that's what you wanted to invite on the show, you can't sit there and pretend you didn't know what was going to happen. That's all I can say. We'll see how that unfolds. Anyway, moving on. For this next story, I want to go straight to the clip and then we'll put context to the story.
I guess you have a warrant?
For what?
I'm not sure.
For voter stuff, man.
For voters.
It's what it is. I think the agents with FDLE talked to you last week about some voter fraud, voter stuff, when you weren't supposed to be voting, maybe.
I didn't.
So
What are they talking about?
that's
man?
what we're not the case agents, but what you got to do, they have reduced your bond quite a bit. It's 2 felony charges for voter fraud, but they reduced it to $500 bonds. So it's $1,000 total.
Oh my God, man! What
So, yes, sir. So unfortunately, right now we're gonna have to take you to jail, but you got a bond right away. You don't have to go to first appearance, nothing like that. So
a bond? I didn't do. What did I do wrong?
We don't know. We're not
the case
all
agents.
they did, they sent us over here because you had a warrant.
Right.
And whenever people have warrants, the people coming to arrest the people, they don't know nothing. You know what I mean? So, you have anything on you at all that you're not supposed to have?
Oliver, you just got married, right? Yes. Okay. So, ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest.
For what?
It's for voter fraud.
Good, how are you, sir?
Right?
Boss, how's it going?
Oh my God, hold on.
Wait.
Let me tell my husband.
We're telling him, he's right here.
Right here. So if you can put your hands behind your back, please.
Oh my God.
Do
So,
not move.
ultimately, ma'am, you have a warrant? Okay. The warrant. Listen, hold on, listen. I know you caught off guard, I understand. Right? So you have a warrant, it's for voter fraud, okay? Hear me out. It's an ROR. You know what an ROR is?
Oh my God.
You go in, you get booked, and then they're going to release you from booking.
You can go right out.
You're going to be right back out. Okay?
Right back
But you have a warrant. And it's from FDLE, okay?
Okay.
All right? So I know you're caught off guard, but unfortunately that's how this stuff works, okay?
I'm like, what the hell?
So,
When I tell you this pissed me off so much, man, just to put things into context, back in 2018, the voters of Florida voted yes for Amendment 4. With this amendment, it would restore the voting rights to people who had been convicted of felonies as long as those felonies did not include murder or a felony sex offense. And so, of course, this was a big deal because that meant 1.5 million people were now eligible to vote. Now, pay attention to that because you have to pay attention to the demographics of who that 1.5 million people would consist of. And a huge portion of that 1.5 million would, of course, be people that if they voted, they would obviously lean a little bit more Democrat than they would Republican. This was not good for somebody like, hating DeSantis. So DeSantis said, oh no, y'all ain't about to come in here just voting. There's other things we need to take care of. And so he pretty much made a stipulation where you can't vote until all of your court fees and everything else have been paid off. Before I go any further, I do want to read a little bit of an article just to put things into context, and then we'll really jump into our conversation. All right, I'm not going to read this whole article because it's a long one, but this is from NC Policy Watch. The article states, Florida gave voting rights to people with felony convictions. Now some face charges for voting. Now this article is actually from May of this year. However, this has been an ongoing thing, but this video that we're seeing pretty much tells the narrative of what's been happening ever since, right? Florida authorities arrested a black man while he was staying in a homeless shelter and charged him with voting illegally in a case tied to Republicans' drive to root out election fraud. But Kelvin Bolton's arrest raises questions about the rollout of Amendment 4, passed by Florida voters in 2018 to restore voting rights to Floridians with felony convictions. The case is one of the first of its kind since Florida ended the Jim Crow-era voting policy that disproportionately affected black citizens. Bolton's arrest shows how the constitutional amendment now is being weaponized against poor people who may not realize that they are committing a crime. When law enforcement found 55-year-old Bolton at the homeless shelter and arrested him for illegal voting, according to court records, and as first reported by Fresh Take Florida at University of Florida, he was on early release from jail but still serving 2.5 years for theft and simple battery. Bolton, who is currently being held in the Alachua County Jail on $30,000 bail, is one of 10 people recently charged in the Gainesville, Florida area with third-degree felonies for illegal voting. 8 of the 10 are black men. They all registered to vote while in jail or mailed ballots from jail, but had unpaid fines and fees from prior felony convictions that barred them from voting under a 2019 law according to the state attorney's office. Each is facing a potential 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. Bolton had registered to vote in July 2020 during a voter registration drive in the county jail conducted by the county's Democratic election supervisor, Kim Barton. Bolton cast a ballot by mail in August and November of 2020. Diedrich Duran Baldwin, another one of the 10 people facing illegal voting charges stemming from the voter registration drive, told Fresh Take Florida that he didn't know he was ineligible. They told us that if we weren't already convicted of our current crime, then we were able to sign up and vote. They probably signed 65 or 70 people up that day, so I don't understand how I can be charged with voter misconduct. All I was doing was what they told me I had a right to do. In 2018, nearly 2/3 of Florida voters approved Amendment 4, which restores voting rights to most people with felony convictions who have completed the terms of their sentence. The amendment originally restored the voting rights to roughly 1.4 million people, but shortly after the election, the state's GOP-controlled legislature passed a law requiring that people with felony convictions pay off all fines, fees, and restitution associated with their sentence before they are eligible to register to vote. After GOP Governor Ron DeSantis signed the law in June 2019, roughly 774,000 people who would have been eligible to vote were no longer allowed. Multiple voting rights groups brought legal challenges to the law, and in an opinion in May 2020, a federal judge said Republicans had created an administrative train wreck and ruled that the people blocked from voting could still participate in elections, but a federal appeals court overturned that order. The back and forth created widespread confusion and left many Floridians unclear about their eligibility to vote. So here's what I'll say to everything that we just read and what we saw. I don't like trickery. I don't like when people who are in positions of power or leadership lead vulnerable populations astray and lead them into nonsense, and people have the wrong idea about something and then they have to pay the consequences all because bad information was put out there and they meant well. They didn't mean any harm. They thought they were doing the right thing. And when you're looking at this, all of those individuals who were arrested, they thought they were doing the right thing, because my question becomes, why did you guys give them a voter registration card? Because for any person off the street who goes through the voter registration process, that voter registration card is confirmation that they can vote in their world. Because again, think about the process you go through. You register, you get the card in the mail. That card in the mail not only tells you that you're eligible to vote, but it also tells you where to go and vote. And so it tells you, go to this precinct. Then you go to that precinct. When you get there, they want to verify who you are. You show them the ID, you show them the voter card. They say, oh, you're on a list, found you right here. They give you this big old packet with information about whatever it is you're voting for, and they tell you to have a good time. Who in their right mind is going to think that they've done something wrong? And so that's what I'm talking about when I say trickery, because really, this is a conversation about end result versus origin. And again, just like we've talked about many times, people are attacking the end result. The end result is people being under the impression that they were able to vote, so they voted because they thought that they could. The origin, however, is that there was a whole bunch of trickery going on up top, and in addition to the fact that there was not enough communication put out there so people could understand that, hey, even though this bill has passed, there has also been a second piece added to it, and you need to make sure that you fall under the guise of what's, allotted within this second piece that's been added. Otherwise, you may be in trouble. None of that was put out there. So now you have 774,000 people who's to say that they actually knew that they weren't eligible to vote? Like, that's the question I have, and I think that's the nonsense about it. And so really, if you're going to have smoke for these people, like, the smoke should be for the people in the offices who did not check the boxes, who did not dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Like, this was manipulative, like, if you really want to talk about it. And really, the goal is to pretty much instill fear. Because let's talk about it. Like, 1.5 million people who can vote, that can definitely sway an election. Look at how close so many elections have been all across the country, where some elections have been just with under, 10 or 11,000 votes. Or even if you talk Florida in, 2000 election, it was 300 something votes that made the deciding factor in that county in regards to Bush versus Gore, once the Supreme Court said, all right, stop the count. But understand, like, 1.5 million is a lot of folks. And so I think they're at this point where they're trying to do any and everything to maintain and hold on to power. And so one of the biggest driving forces and biggest arguments that they have pushed is the idea of voter fraud, which, again, has never been a thing in this country from a collective standpoint. The idea of millions committing voter fraud. Nobody in this country is that pressed about anybody who's running for office. Like, think about, like, because even when you go back to, 2016, right? So Trump wins, and people are like, well, you still lost a popular election. And his response was, oh, no, it was 3 million illegal votes. It was illegal immigrants voting, and it was people who had voted 30 times, and tens of thousands of people were scamming. Nobody is that pressed about any of these politicians. Nobody wants to ruin their livelihood just to vote for a candidate, because at the end of the day, your livelihood does not stop and end with voting. That's just one piece of the pie. That's one piece of the journey. And so there's been this entire narrative created where you have lots of Americans who are really under the impression that so many folks are out here, plotting in the basement of how they're going to steal different elections. Like, if you think random black folks in Florida were trying to commit voter fraud to get any of these politicians in office, you got another thing coming. And really, if you want to talk about voter fraud, you need to look at the leadership, because really, a lot of the cases that we have seen in regards to people who are doing or committing voter fraud are people in power, all right? Let's talk about those fake electors. That whole thing with the people who were pretending that they were the electors so that they could certify the election and change the results to the candidate that they wanted. That was something that could only be done with people on the inside who had connections, all right? Because these people literally went and created documents that were replicas of the documents that would have gone to the National Archives. Like, there's all these different things that people had done. People were getting led into back doors. And so I don't want to hear about voter fraud. As a matter of fact, let me read something real quick. Just a quick snippet here. I'm talking about snippet like I'm playing something on SoundCloud. 11 Arizonans were among the 84 people who signed onto bogus election documents in 2020. The 84 people who signed bogus documents claiming Donald Trump won the 2020 election includes dozens of local Republican Party leaders, 4 current candidates for public office, 6 current office holders, and at least 5 previous state and federal office holders. Groups from Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin all allegedly met in December 2020 and sent lists of so-called alternate electors to the National Archives after the 2020 election. The scheme is reportedly under investigation by the FBI and the Department of Justice, which have also issued subpoenas to several of the people involved. So again, who's committing the voter fraud? Because again, these are elected officials participating in the nonsense. It's not just the everyday people. Like I said, people in positions of power that carry influence and have access into doors that most of us don't have access into, participating in the shenanigans so that they can ensure that they get their way in regards to who it is that they want in office. So when we talk about voter fraud, y'all need to look at the leadership. Even when you talk about January 6th, when you talk about those senators that decided they were going to contest the election results, knowing they knew exactly how everything went down. But understand that those moments where you had somebody like a Ted Cruz say, no, I'm not going to, no, absolutely, no. Like, all of that was the signal, okay? When we're talking January 6th, as more unfolds with January 6th, and we've been talking about January 6th since it started, like, understand, this thing had layers and layers and layers and layers. And those senators contesting that nonsense was a piece of the layer. That's the signal for the next phase. And of course, Mike Pence didn't do what they wanted him to do as far as saying, okay, I'm going to, contest it and I'm not going to sign the stuff off. All of this was a part of the larger ploy, but nobody's really talking about that. We've seen all of the shenanigans, all of the people who have literally gone out of their way to try to run and screw over whatever happened in 2020, and nobody's even really being held accountable, minus a handful of people. The people in leadership are getting a slap on the wrist, and then the stupid people who were fool enough to go and bust into the Capitol, you see some of them finally getting some sentences and charges, and you see that the leadership is not even backing them. So I'm like, I don't know how this all worked, but enjoy, folks. Enjoy. But again, it's just nonsense all around when you're talking about the leadership. You got the phone call with Orange Man on the phone with Kemp. Hey, I need 11,000 votes. The people of Georgia are going to be really upset if you can't come through. I'm just like, what kind of nonsense? And then you got people in all these different electorate positions that are purging the different voter rolls and everything like that, trying to purposely get people off of the list so they can't vote, because again, then you have the conversation of voter disenfranchisement. You have different polling stations that have been closed in specific areas where they know that people tend to vote a certain kind of way, so they just close all the polling areas and make it extremely difficult for people to vote because they're going to end up standing in line for hours and hours and hours. There's a reason why since 2004 you keep seeing these instances where people are standing in line for hours to vote. Who remembers Ohio in 2004 when it was Bush versus Kerry? Like, this isn't anything new under the sun. And so again, the part that really just gets me is this is a part of a bigger ploy, because like I've said, I always say this is not the time to tap out politically. I know that a lot of us are frustrated with what's been happening. We're frustrated with a lot of the people we put in there. If you've been following me for years, I've been saying, like, at least since 2018, the time to start putting in those candidates that you really believe in or supporting, the time was then to prep for something like a 2024. But nobody ever moves with the needle. Just people move reactionary. Like, people move in the last moments and just wait till it gets to 2024 and we get to October. You're going to have all these celebrities pop up again and try to start movements. But again, just understand, like, I wouldn't say this is the time to tap out, because now we're in a space where you have people who aren't even competent in power. And not only that, but they're cementing the things that they want. So even when they are finally out of office and other people come in there, it's going to take an act of God to undo some of the stuff these people are trying to do. And that's why I'm just like, it's all crazy. And that's why it goes back full circle. The best way to make sure that you can make sure that folks always stay in power and that you don't ever change the status quo is you make sure that the people don't show up. I am not the biggest advocate who believes that voting fixes everything. I think, like I said, it's one piece of the pie. That I think there's additional follow-up that you have to do, because the world does not stop and begin with just voting. That's step one. But understand, if you can just stop the people from even showing up, then again, you have the cards in your favor in regards to making sure you get what you want. So you make sure that the people that you don't want to vote, because you know that they're going to go and vote against what it is you're pushing for, if you can make sure that they don't show up, if you can make sure they stay incarcerated, if you can make sure you keep them afraid of signing up because they don't want the smoke of possibly being charged with a third-degree felony, if you can ensure that you can keep the polls closed, if you can ensure that you can put misinformation out there about different candidates and start all kind of movements to get people confused and operate as an agent of chaos so that you can stay in power, then yeah, that's what's going to happen. And that's what we're witnessing. And so it's jacked up that these people have all been charged. I do think with a good lawyer, most of them should be able to get off, because again, like, the language is not put out there. They didn't vote knowing that they were in the wrong. They were under the assumption that they did everything right. So that's just jacked up. I don't like no trickery. That's messed up. And again, of all the things to go and chase people down for, like, we got real problems in this country. Y'all pissed because people voted. Voting should already just be a right that everybody has anyway. I don't know why we make it so difficult in this country. Anyway, moving on. So this next story I want to jump into, and it's crazy because it jumps right into that same conversation we had about origin versus end result. So let me read some of the article first. It states, Missouri elementary school where radioactive waste was found will switch to virtual instruction. Some of the article states, Environmental investigation consultants reported last week that radioactive lead more than 22 times the expected level was found in the Jana Elementary School kindergarten playground, and that more than 12 times the expected level was found by the school's basketball courts. Jana Elementary is in the floodwater plain of Coldwater Creek, which was contaminated during the 1940s and 50s when radioactive waste from weapons production for World War II was dumped nearby. The Army Corps of Engineers has been cleaning up the creek for more than 2 decades. It has been testing the area around the creek for years, but it never tested inside or within 300 feet of the elementary school. Last week's independent report from Boston Chemical Data Corps, which marked the first time samples had been taken from inside Jana Elementary, confirmed parents' worst fears. It showed that radioactive levels were most likely posing unacceptably high risk to the children. The Army Corps of Engineers downplayed the findings. And then this is where it gets spicy. The student population of Jana Elementary, just outside of St. Louis, is about 80% black. One father pleaded with the school board to view the contamination as an urgent environmental justice issue. Parents said they and others they know in the community had been diagnosed with rare cancers or faced other serious health problems that they felt were the direct result of their exposure to radioactive waste. So the crazy thing about all of this is we literally just talked about how environmental racism affects different communities, I think on the last in the news, and how everything works full circle and ties together. And I highlighted the fact that a lot of times there's different communities that are prone to health issues because of what's in the air, what's in the water, what's in the ground, what's in the pipes. And so here we are, and now we're seeing a situation where you have an elementary school that sits in an area that has these high levels of radioactive waste, and they're just now discovering it. So now you have to think about how many generations of people have come through the doors of that school. And not even just that school, because the school is just the one place that they tested. I'm sure a lot of areas surrounding that school, different neighborhoods, everything, all of them probably have similar rates of radioactive waste in the area. So now you're thinking about the generations of people who've come through those doors or been in that area and who have been sick. Because it talked about how people had thyroid issues, health concerns over the generations, and how, you know, people are getting cancer and everything else like that. But it highlights the fact that the U.S. is real sloppy. Okay, the U.S. is really sloppy when it comes to making sure the citizens are okay. Because really, it's not even just how we do things in the U.S. Like, who remembers like what happened with the Marshall Islands? Right? So you go back to the area between, or the time period between 1946, 1958. That's when the U.S. decided that the Marshall Islands were going to be like the guinea pig of where they would test all the nuclear weapons. And so between 46 and 58, they dropped about 67 nuclear bombs in the area. You know, blow them up in the water, which was terrible because the area was like this beautiful area. Like, it's this area not too far from Hawaii where you have like the coral reefs and the beautiful water. And mind you, the Marshall Islands at that point in time, at one point, were a U.S. territory. That's the jacked up part about it. Like, they were brought in just like the U.S. brought in Puerto Rico or Hawaii in 1896, and then that became a state. Or, you know, Guam or American Samoa. Like, same kind of situation, but they ended up getting their independence in 79. But the crazy part is, they literally drop all these bombs on the islands, and at one point there was a bomb that was dropped in 1954, and they totally dropped the ball in regards to the testing. Now mind you, they shouldn't have been doing the testing anyway, because it was going to still disrupt and contaminate the community anyway. But with one of the bombs, they underestimated what the wind was going to be doing that day. In addition to the fact that they did not realize it was going to be such a bomb that had like 3 times the radius of what they had expected to test. So they thought it was going to be a little and it was like, oh, wait a minute, the radius is 3 times greater than what we thought. In addition to that, that specific bomb was 1,000 times greater than what was dropped on Hiroshima. And so, you know, you have this bomb that gets dropped. The wind is going in the wrong direction. So the wind carries all of those particles, all of the, what you call the fallout, into the additional islands, right? And so it expands and it goes. And the crazy part is when this bomb goes off, all of what you call the fallout, it's like the ashes, the dust, it's like powder. It fell in that area for 10 hours on top of the people that were living on those different islands. And so people started getting sick. People were having their hair fall out. People were getting lesions on their skin. It was to the point where the U.S. had to actually come and fly people out and say, okay, we're going to move you guys to Arkansas. Or we're going to move you to other areas. And so they moved 257 people off the island. But a lot of the people who were initially there, and mind you, this is multiple islands, but I'm specifically speaking about one island that they evacuated. A lot of the people who were there are no longer living, because they got sick. They got crazy forms of cancer, things that were unheard of. The people just did not make it. And it's crazy because, again, the people of that island did not ask to be a part of any of that. But again, the U.S. decided we're going to take this territory, it's ours now, and we're going to use it to test our bombs. So just think about, even when you're talking about the oceans and everything, you want to drop a bunch of bombs in the oceans. Water moves. Water finds its way to our coastlines. It finds its way, you know, into our streams and everything else. And so y'all want to just keep bombing it 67 times, right? And so again, they did that there, and now you're looking at what's happening with the citizens here. It's like crazy. You have all these kids who've been going to school. Now the school needs to be virtual, and it's just crazy because people always end up being collateral to the decisions of people up top sometimes in this country. And I just think it's really jacked up. I really wish I could find what the covenants were in that area. Like if I could go to City Hall and dig up the covenants, because mind you, that's a suburb of St. Louis. But I wonder what the redlining situation is, because when I read 80% black, I'm like, okay, well, I wonder why it's an area that's like 80% black. I know it's a suburb, it's pretty mixed and diverse, but I'm wondering in regards to like housing and zoning and coding, if even that plays a role, because then that even ties further into my argument about, you know, how with redlining specifically in the correlation to environmental racism, how they're hand in hand and just tie together. It's all crazy. It's scary because that definitely means there's generations of people who have just been exposed to radioactive waste. And understand that's also an area that's prone to flooding. And so again, like we said, radioactive waste is not something you can just rinse off and it goes away. It's around for thousands of years. Like, you just can't get rid of it. And so an area that's prone to flooding, I'm thinking when all of those floods hit and that water is everywhere and it spreads across, like how many people are really in danger or have been exposed to some of those chemicals and some of that radioactive waste. Like, that's a scary thing to think about. And like I said, what makes it scarier is it's not even just that area. Like, we got a bunch of places around the country that have that same situation taking place. Absolutely crazy. Man. I wanted to actually end this video on a good note, but dang, I can't think of nothing good to share. Well, I guess I could say I did run into one of my favorite entertainers the other day, just to segue and close this video out. Like, I ran into Duckworth. Like, I was on my way somewhere and I totally forgot I needed to stop at the bank. I was like, dang, I gotta take cash out. So I had to turn my car around, go to the bank, and when I was talking to the bank, I was like, that looks like Duckworth. No, that can't be him. And so I'm in the bank, I was like, wait a minute, he was here last night, because he had a show on the 15th. I didn't get into it though, because it was already sold out by the time I discovered they had tickets. I was like, oh, he is here. And then I realized he was sitting on a bench in front of the hotel that he had been staying at. I was like, that is him. So I went up and said, what's up? I didn't do one of those crazy things where you're starstruck and ask for a picture or nothing. It was like 10 in the morning. Nobody wants to take pictures that early. But he was real cool, so that was a cool experience. Anyway, we covered a lot today. Share your 2 cents. I think I'm going to go live. I want to go live Sunday. I don't know if we can do it. If not, we're definitely going live next week. But anyway, I'm out. Share your 2 cents. Subscribe.
It's a parade. I'll go the extra mile for you. Let me serenade. Tell me if you want me to. But you're special. You bring a kind of magic to my life. You're so special. Dance into the night, I hold your body tight. So you hit my phone, I'll check your text, ring